I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I have a special guest with me tonight. His name is Mike, and he is here to talk about a direct action event for Julian Assange. So, Mike, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Mike. So there is a direct action event coming up this weekend for Julian Assange. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I'll show everyone the Facebook event.
Sure. Yeah. So this Sunday at 8 a.m. is the makeup commencement for Harvard's classes of 2020 and 2021. And the commencement speaker is Attorney General Merrick Garland. And Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice are leading the extradition and the prosecution against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. And so there will be a group of us, of local Assange supporters and activists here in Boston outside of the event in order to protest the extradition and to try and bring attention to it.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think this is an awesome idea. For those who don't know, like Harvard's graduation started actually a couple of days ago, but it goes throughout the whole week, including the weekend. So a lot of people will be present at Harvard's graduation. They usually do this outside, I believe. So this should get a lot of attention.
Yeah, that's correct. It's scheduled to be inside the Harvard Yard. So we're going to be outside of the Smith Campus Center at the intersection of Mass Ave and at Holyoke Street. And this includes the classes of both 2020 and 2021, which were postponed due to COVID. So it could potentially be like the largest commencement event ever in history of the university. So definitely a lot of people will be there.
Now, why did you decide to get involved with this particular action?
Well, I guess first and foremost, the prosecution of Assange is the first prosecution of a journalist or a publisher under the 1917 Espionage Act in history. So this will set a very dangerous precedent and open up the doors for really any investigative journalism or any sort of national security journalism to be criminalized here in the United States. But one other interesting connection, I guess, is that Merrick Garland is an alum of Harvard University, both class of 74 and then also Harvard Law class of 77. So Merrick Garland is not just the type of person who the university invites to freely opine at its largest event of the year, but it's also he's the type of person who was produced by Harvard. So the university really should be embarrassed and ashamed of the prosecution and the fact that their alum is leading the way and opening the door to destroying the free press, but instead they're effectively glorifying him. So we're trying to bring some attention both to the guests who will be there and also to get Garland's attention and to make him, I guess, rethink and see if he really wants this to be his legacy.
Excellent idea. And I do want to share the Facebook event with everyone so they can see this as well. So here's the Facebook event here. Again, this is Sunday, May 29th at 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And it's Merrick Garland, drop the charges, free Assange. And I just want to scroll down here and give you a description. Supporters of Julian Assange will go to Harvard University graduation for the classes of 2020 and 2021 on Sunday, May 29th from 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. to try to get Attorney General Merrick Garland's attention with our big banner, Merrick Garland Free Assange. We will gather near Smith Campus Center at the intersection of Mass Ave and Holyoke Street. This is across from Clover Food Lab, and hold signs, give out literature to attendees, and speak with a mic once Garland has spoken or is speaking. Feel free to call Susan's cell phone 617-501-9125 if you can't find us. Julian Assange is the founder of WikiLeaks, and he is being held by the UK because the US wants to extradite him to be charged under the Espionage Act for releasing classified information about US war crimes. Even though this is standard practice for investigative journalism, and he is not a US citizen. The US is accusing him of espionage. He faces 175 years in prison if convicted. In mid-March, the UK Supreme Court refused to hear Assange appeal on their earlier decision that Assange would be extradited to the US. In April, a UK court ordered the extradition of Assange to the US. The final decision in this case will be made by the UK Home Secretary, Priti Patel, but at any time, Joe Biden or Merrick Garland could drop the charges and the case would be over. For more info, contact Mike McCauley, Harvard class of 2022 I'll put your email here. I'm going to put this information in the chat.
Okay, yeah.
And it goes on to say, or Susan or Paula Isella at AssangeBoston@gmail.com. The latter two both of Boston area Assange defense. This action is being organized by concerned Harvard students and Boston area Assange events. And it says the host is Massachusetts Peace Action. Now they are phenomenal. I was at an event with them with Jill Stein for Earth Day. So they're awesome.
Yeah, Massachusetts Peace Action does a lot of great work. I'd probably really set the gold standard for anti-war activism, in my opinion.
Absolutely. So everyone, here is the link to the Facebook event. I just put that link in the chat so you can see more detail. And I believe we have a question here in reference to donation. Sebastian says, is there a link to donate to the direct action?
I don't think there's a link to donate. We don't really have any kind of significant charges. Hopefully we won't require bail or anything. I don't think there's really a need for donations at this point, but I appreciate the support.
Okay, awesome. And another question I had as well. Give me just 1 second. I saw there was a question here, or maybe oh, no, this is a comment. This is a good point. Angela said Assange is being punished for the crimes he exposed, while the criminals he exposed walk free.
Yeah, absolutely. Assange, among many things he revealed through the collateral murder video, citizens being gunned down, civilians, journalists from Reuters were shot, medics who tried to help them were shot, and the only person who's being punished is Assange. And in this instance, the messenger is being shot, metaphorically.
Exactly. And I do want to give everyone that address one more time. Let me put this back up here, because this will be a busy time, you guys, because I don't know, like I've worked in higher ed, so I've worked with a lot of these graduation events. So it will be very busy. I recommend, if you're going there, to make sure that you take public transportation if you can. Let me go ahead and share the address one more time so people can see this. And I'll make this a little bit larger. So again, this is going to be, let's see. Right outside the Smith Center. So that's Massachusetts Avenue and Holyoke Street.
Yeah. And we'd love to see anyone come out who's in the Boston area.
Absolutely. Mike, are you guys going to have like signs, or are you wearing any like specific like t-shirts?
Yeah, we should have signs, for Julian Assange that should be identifiable. I think I'll be wearing a t-shirt that has Assange's face on it as well. So we should be identifiable there.
Awesome. So again, everyone, this is taking place this Sunday, May 29th from 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. outside the Smith Center at Harvard University, Mass Ave, and Holyoke Street. I wish you guys like the best of luck with this event. I would be there if I didn't already have an event, but I wish you the best of luck because a lot of people come to Harvard's graduation, you guys. Like, I don't know if everyone realizes just like how many people come, and there's a lot of big names that come to Harvard's graduation as well. So this should get a lot of attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for coming on. If there's any updates like after the event that you want to tell me about or you want to come on and talk about, feel free to just email me, let me know.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
All right, guys. Welcome and happy Friday. We got to talk about these events, you guys. Like, if you hear of more direct action events, feel free to email me and let me know. Like, that's usually how I find out about a lot of them, believe it or not. People will reach out to me and tell me about it. So definitely, if you are in the area and you can attend, definitely attend that event. Should be really good. It's going to be a big deal. And shame on Merrick Garland. Shame on Merrick Garland. All right, guys, I do want to go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Guys, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and Ultimate. All of their names are listed here, as you can see. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. And their names are also scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So, what are we talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Let me go ahead and share my thumbnail. Yes, Devotion Orange, I am live. All right, tonight we're discussing Jimmy Dore and Chris Hedges' call for peace. So that is an interesting conversation. I can't wait to get into that. That's in reference to Russia and Ukraine. I'm also going to discuss AOC versus Nancy Pelosi. What did Nancy Pelosi do that made AOC so angry? And should we take her frustration seriously? Or is this just more performative BS? And last but not least, we're going to discuss Texas cop shame. There's so much that's been going on since that school shooting in Texas. And this is another story that has come from this. So every day I feel like it's more information that is coming out. So we will get into those. Who was that? Someone just asked me again. Is it? Okay, that's the same person. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with this AOC story. So let me go ahead and share that. Okay. Let me give you a little bit of background so you understand where this tweet is coming from. Right now, there is a race between Henry Cuellar and Jessica Cisneros in Texas. Now, this is the second time that they have run against each other. The race right now is extremely close. Henry has already declared victory. Jessica is still holding on, because when I say it's very close, and I'm going to show you the numbers in just a second, it is very close. But she is still holding on. But I would go ahead and say it's safe to say that she has lost. She lost to him last time as well. But AOC is a little bit angry here, a little bit frustrated at Democrat leadership because she feels like this is their fault. So let's get into it. So AOC tweeted this: on the day of a mass shooting and weeks after news of Roe, Democratic Party leadership rallied for a pro-NRA, anti-choice incumbent under investigation in a close primary. robocalls, fundraisers, all of it. Accountability isn't partisan. This was an utter failure of Democratic leadership. Now, she is referring to Henry Cuellar. That's the candidate that she's referring to here, who she's correct. He is anti-choice and he is pro-NRA, and he was actually under investigation in January of this year, which Nancy Pelosi did not want to comment on that. But she goes on to say, Congress should not be an incumbent protection racket, and sadly, it is treated as such by far too many. The fact is, those who fail their communities deserve to lose. They don't need rescuing from powerful leaders who state they fight for gun safety, the right to choose, and more. She goes on from here. Texas 28 is an extremely close race. If Cuellar wins, leadership decision to go to the mat for a pro-NRA incumbent will be the reason why. If Cisneros pulls it out, they will have mobilized against a badly needed grassroots for November and fought against a historic victory. And for what? And she goes on. The last time leadership waded in to save him, he thanked them by obstructing the party's signature legislation, paving the way for the child tax credit to collapse, and imperiling millions while taking a victory lap for it. We can't afford to reward such acts. We can do better. Now let's go back to the very first tweet from this thread. Okay, let's go ahead and break this down. On the day of the mass shooting and weeks after news of Roe, Democratic Party leadership rallied for a pro-NRA anti-choice incumbent under investigation in a close primary. So here's the problem that I have with this. What she's saying here is correct. Yes, that is Nancy Pelosi, mainly Nancy Pelosi, but that's her. That is also Jim Clyburn. Both of them went down to Texas to campaign for Henry Cuellar. They endorsed him. They publicly endorsed him. So she is correct about that. Here's the part that's a little bit deceiving. This part here, on the day of the mass shooting and weeks after news of Roe, that's when Democratic Party leadership rallied for him. That actually is not true, because they had already announced that they were endorsing him. They had already been to Texas before the mass shooting happened. So I don't know if she just got her days mixed up here. I don't know if she's trying to exaggerate or what, but they were rallying for Henry Cuellar before this even happened. And my question is this. AOC knew that, just like it was announced to, major news outlets, and I reported that to you guys. I told you when they endorsed him. She knew that too. She's right there in the house with them in DC. She knew before I did, probably. Why didn't she call it out back then? Let's go on. Let's go on to the second one. This is why I say a lot of times this is performative. Why didn't she call it out when Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn endorsed Henry Cuellar? There's also some hypocrisy here, and I want to explain this. How are you going to call out Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn for endorsing Henry Cuellar? Because he's anti-choice, pro-NRA. I get it. But how are you going to call them out for not endorsing the progressive candidate? And every one of your comrades that was a member of the squad also did not endorse the progressive candidate. She didn't call them out. When Nina Turner was running against Shontel Brown, let's remember the only one who came forward to endorse Nina Turner was AOC, and she did it the night before, so it was performative BS anyway. Where's the tweet about that, AOC? Where's the tweet calling out the other members of the squad who also chose to endorse the corporate candidate over the progressive candidate? Where's that tweet? I don't know if anyone caught that in this thread. Let's go on. Let's dissect this. Let's go back to this one where she says Congress should not be an incumbent protection racket. Okay. I agree. It shouldn't be a incumbent protection racket. But didn't Pramila Jayapal from the Progressive Caucus say that the reason why they had to endorse Shontel Brown is because that's tradition, that you endorse the incumbent who's already the member of the Progressive Caucus? Didn't AOC go along with that? Remember, I reported on this story. Every single member of the Progressive Caucus endorsed Shontel Brown. Every single one of them. You see the hypocrisy? Let's go to the next one. Texas 28 is an extremely close race. If Cuellar wins, leadership decision to go to the mat for a pro-NRA incumbent will be the reason why. I disagree. That could be part of it. But the reason why they are going to the mat for him is not just necessarily because he's pro-NRA, but let's be real, AOC. It's because he's corporate. It's because he's a corporate Democrat. He's an establishment Democrat, which is what they want. Didn't you remember when Nina Turner went on the Hill and Nina Turner said, what did she say to you? That they told her she was not the right kind of Democrat, someone who can't be bought. AOC, having been a progressive candidate, she knows that. So when AOC types this tweet, why would she not mention the money? This is the part, you guys, I continue to bring up. Notice how they leave out the money, and that's the biggest key. And bring it up. It's easier for her to mention pro-NRA. That's obvious. But I notice it doesn't seem so easy for her to just mention, look, Democratic Party leadership went to bat for the corporate candidate. That's what you need to call it. Because regardless if he's pro-NRA, regardless if he's anti-choice, he's corporate, period. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. The last time leadership waded in to save him, he thanked them by obstructing the party's signature legislation, paving the way for the child tax credit to collapse and imperiling millions while taking a victory lap for it. Now, what that tells you and what that tells me is that at the end of the day, the Democratic Party doesn't care about the kids that they said they cared about, right? If they're willing to bring that same politician back into the House, that means that the Democratic Party don't care about your kids. Chuck Schumer's out here going around telling people right now that they're not going to put forth any type of gun legislation after the school shooting in Texas. 19 kids. Why? They don't care about your kids. Now, I have to ask you this question. Let's pretend Jessica Cisneros won. Would AOC have called out Democratic leadership for endorsing and fighting for Henry Cuellar? I don't think so. Why did she wait until after the election results to then voice her opinion? Where was her opinion? Where was her railing? Where was her fight, her anger when they first announced that they were endorsing him? Let's look at the numbers. Let me pull this up over here. Let's see where they are right now. Now, this may be a little bit different from when I checked it earlier, but I doubt it. Okay. Texas 28th Congressional District runoff election results. That's the Republican one. But the one that we want to pay attention to is right here. The Democrat primary runoff. Is the map down here? Okay, good. Look at this race. Henry Cuellar has 22,692 votes. Jessica Cisneros has 22,517 votes. This race was incredibly close. Now, let's look at the district. So here's the map. As you can see, so the green color here is Jessica Cisneros. So she was able to get these counties closer to San Antonio. So you can see here, Guadalupe County, Bexar County, whoops, it's hovering over, Atascasa County, and McMullen County. But as you get further away from San Antonio, this is where Henry starts to win. This is the area that he gets. Webb County, Duval County, Zapata County, Jim Hogg County, and Starr County. So there is obviously a clear divide here between what people want. But again, if Jessica Cisneros was winning, would AOC have that same feeling? Is she more angry about the fact that they're bringing back in another corporate Democrat? Or is she more angry about the fact that this is like the second time that I remember that third time that I remember that the progressive candidate that she has endorsed has lost? Jessica Cisneros, India Walton, Nina Turner. Let's all remember, AOC didn't endorse Cori Bush. So these are the types of things I want you to pay attention to. This is why I like to say, is it real or is it performative? Because if you were really that angry about Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn endorsing the corporate candidate, Henry Cuellar, then why, AOC, didn't you mention that when it was first announced that they endorsed him? Performative. And again, you notice she doesn't mention Nancy Pelosi's name here. I think she knows better. But everyone knows anybody who's been following this, or if you've been watching me, we all know who she's talking about. It's very clear. There were only a couple of people that endorsed her. That endorsed Henry. And we know who those people are. But here's the problem. It's not just the corporate Democrats that's the problem. Some of these organizations are also the problem. The same organizations that are supposed to be fighting for progressive candidates, they're backing corporate Democrats. I want you to look at this. Now, this tweet is from Imani Oakley. So she is a progressive that's running for Congress for the state of New Jersey. She was the one that pointed this out, and I really applaud her for saying this, because some people will just be quiet and not mention it because they're afraid it might make them lose. But thank you for pointing this out. So here's what Imani had to say. Disappointed but not surprised, New Jersey Working Families Party has been playing both sides for years now. But our fight was never about loyalty to an org. It's about the people. And on June 7th, the people will win. Now, here's what she says. The working families parties just announced. I lost my type B and C. The Working Families Party just announced that they decided to endorse Representative Donald Payne Jr. in the New Jersey 10 primary. In New Jersey, Working Family Party is the epitome of machine politics. Their voting members aren't everyday people, but political operatives, some of whom have actively badmouthed my campaign to the press, calling me too ambitious, taking part in sexist, racist attacks against me. Now, there's more that goes on here. Meanwhile, Representative Donald Payne Jr. has accepted contributions from anti-union corporate PACs, including Amazon. He failed to co-sponsor the Fair Pay Act and the hazard pay for the front lines during Health Emergency Act. He's taken money from the world's worst polluters, including fossil fuel PACs representing companies like ExxonMobil, Enbridge, and the Association of Oil Pipelines, and refuses to support a Green New Deal. He's taken over $1 million in corporate PAC money and trade group money. So much for getting big money out of politics. So this is exactly what I've been telling you guys about. Some of these organizations, the Working Families Party, Sunrise Movement, Justice Democrats, they're corrupted now. They've been taking billionaire money. The Working Families Party should not be endorsing a corporate Democrat. They're supposed to endorse the progressive, working class Democrats that are running. And look at how they have been co-opted. This is what happens when you take that money. Now, Eric, I didn't put this in there, but I just thought about this. Can you go to my call-in segment from yesterday, the one about progressive new strategy? Let me know if you need the link. And I'm going to fast forward to that part where Zeneb talks about the money, what happened, because people need to hear this. If you haven't heard this on call-in, this is what I was trying to tell people about these so-called progressive grassroots organizations. Let me open it up. Let me see if this is where she's at. I know it's Zeneb that says it. Give me just a second. Okay. Eric, if you go to 17 minutes and let me see. Go to 1711 and I can put it up on the screen. So Zeneb used to work for Brand New Congress. She also worked for Justice Democrats. So I want you to hear what she had to say about the money. And I'm going to fall back. Or either, which has happened with the squad and other progressive members. And I think back to Justice Democrats and Zeneb, I know you know more about this than me. But at one point, you know, Justice Democrats went south, in my opinion, when they decided to take billionaire money. So Zeneb, I want to go ahead and bring you in.
Yeah, good question. I think Case's ideas are awesome. I did want to say that one of the things about electoral politics we have to keep in mind is every single state has different ballot rules. Some states it's super easy to run as independents, and others they make it almost impossible. Some you can run as a write-in campaign, others.
Oh, guys, I want to say really quick, if you're just joining, don't forget to hit that like button. That really does help with the algorithm.
You can't. Every state's different, and then local and federal are different. And that's where the nuances kind of come into play, and possibly strategizing around, you know, the ways that we can get people on the ballot in the states where it's easier, and then figuring out how we can adjust for the states where it's harder. But, you know, in some places it's damn near impossible to run, and it's damn near impossible to run not on a party line. that kind of takes me into like brand new Congress and Justice Democrats. I worked for Justice Democrats as their press director back in 2017. So a long time ago, you know, I helped with the first Medicare for All push that we did. We saw that we had like 230 co-sponsors, ended up increasing it to 230 co-sponsors for Medicare for All, and it still didn't get passed. But what I had learned was, you know, all these people that came off the Bernie Sanders campaign, there was these networks in behind in the back scenes that I didn't see until later. And some of them I didn't learn about until just 6-7 months ago. But
listen to this, you guys. This is important.
There was one organization, for instance, it was a marketing firm called Middle Seat. Middle Seat brought in, get this guys, $64 million. It's probably more now. I haven't looked at the latest FEC reports. That was for the last cycle of FEC reports. But they do all the comms, just about it, for Justice Democrats. They do almost all the squad. They do almost every Justice Democrat candidate. And they're just pulling in all this money, $64 million. And if we think about the small dollar donors, you know, that have given, that's our money. A lot of that's our money that people gave to these candidates because they believe in them, going to people who used to work on Bernie's campaign that now have this huge machine. These same people with Middle Seat worked for Joe Biden in 2020. They also were the people that got behind Beto O'Rourke. I think Beto O'Rourke gave them something like $28 million alone to make him look progressive.
Yep.
So it's the people that kind of took the Bernie boom with these values and these issues that were so important for us. And they basically just turned these issues into a fundraising machine. And then you saw, you know, AOC start a super PAC and give money to a whole bunch of corporate candidates. You saw.
Did you hear that?
You know, Justice Democrats go and start a super PAC, which I almost fell over when I saw that because, you know, we were adamantly against that when I was there. This happened long after the PAC split between Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats. But unfortunately, you know, BNC, I helped to grow and worked there for 4 years. And I saw them slide to where we were no longer recruiting candidates to run because people like Anthony Clark, Sarah Smith, Paula Jean Swearingen, Rick Trevino, we had actually recruited these people to run from the ground up. They were just regular working people. Instead, they've shifted to where it's people already running. They're looking at, oh, how much dollars are these people raising? How much can we raise off of these people? So these organizations and the movements shift to where they're fundraising. They're no longer doing actions. We did, you know, the Abolish ICE action started through Brand New Congress. We used to do actions on the ground, organizing, mutual aid. These organizations stopped doing that. You know, we're even seeing Sunrise, you know, where they started doing actions and organizing, shift to more of the political fundraising arm. So we see that with DSA. We see these organizations shift from being action oriented to where they're just fundraising on the next issue. You know, it was they were in support of BLM. They were, you know, anti-police while the George Floyd protests were going on. Then they shift to, you know, whatever is the topic of the moment. Now it's going to be gun control for that 15 minutes. And then they're going to shift off of that. While these issues are impacting our lives every single day, it's simply a talking point for these people that are just trying to get elected and not doing a damn thing when they get up there. And
what did I tell you? See, when I first reported about Middle Seat on this show, people were like, you don't know what you're talking about, not realizing that I had already spoken to the source. This is why when I talk about the money, I make sure I have receipts. All of those progressive organizations have been corrupted. They've all been co-opted. Once you start taking in billionaire money, you've sold out. She even told you they were doing like mutual aid. They stopped doing that. They stopped going from getting working class people, building them from the ground up and getting those people to run like Paula Jean Swearingen. They moved away from that formula and created a new formula where they wanted to get people who already had political backing, that already had their feet wet. That's how someone like Summer Lee comes in. This is why I tell you to follow the money. How many people are talking about this? How many people are showing you this? I'm not talking about the fact that the squad's not doing what they're supposed to do. I'm talking about the corruption with the money, even in these progressive organizations. Something to think about. I'm gonna go to some of the comments and I'll go to our next story. Shout out to Luis Anthon says, just subscribe. Thank you and welcome, Luis. Shout out to Terry says, it's all about money. These fake progressives have sold out. Corrupted. Just like that. And you know what sucks is that the people who actually do have good intentions, who actually are good-hearted and really do want to create a change, it just makes it 10 times harder for them because the people who came before them, or the cohort that came before them, didn't do anything. Got to learn about the money, kids. Got to learn about the money. All right. Let's go ahead and go to the second story. I'm actually going to grab these two comments right here. I was on a call with Sunrise Movement this week about exactly what you're speaking on, letting them know that their 2.0 revamp better put up or shut up. Thank you so much for saying that, Lou. You got to call them out, you guys. We got to call them out. Nico, middle seat ultimate grifter machine. Yes. Did a whole segment about middle seat on this show. All right, guys, let's go into our second story. Now, this one involves Russia, Ukraine. So I don't know if you got to see this segment the other night, but Chris Hedges was on Jimmy Dore, and they were talking about what should Ukraine do right now at this moment? Like what really makes the most sense, basically. So but before I get into that, I do want to tell you what Henry Kissinger is saying. So Henry Kissinger, of all people, Mr. War Criminal himself, even he is saying we should have peace. Now, for those who are not familiar, Henry Kissinger, FYI, there is a book written by Christopher Hitchens called The Trial of Henry Kissinger, and that book examines his war crimes. That guy is calling for peace. Let's take a look at that. All right, so here we go. Kissinger says Ukraine should cede territory to Russia to end war. Again, that's coming from Mr. War Criminal himself. I almost fell out of my seat when I heard that. Let's go down. I'll just read a short part of this and then I'll get to the video. Former U.S. Secretary of State Henry A. Kissinger said Monday that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia to help end the invasion, suggesting a position that a vast majority of Ukrainians are against as the war enters its fourth month. Speaking at a conference at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Kissinger urged the United States and the West not to seek an embarrassing defeat for Russia and Ukraine, warning it could worsen Europe's long-term stability. Again, this is coming from Mr. War Criminal himself. Joe Biden, you know you done fucked up, right? You know you're really messed up when you have someone like him putting you to shame. Gamer said Kissinger needs prison. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So that's that. Now, let's go into this discussion with Chris Hedges and Jimmy Dore, because Chris Hedges actually goes a little bit deeper with this. Of course, he's very knowledgeable about this. So I want to go ahead and get this started here. And I'll add this to the screen and I will chime in between. And I did not mean to rhyme there, but it happened. So here we go.
Speaking at the World Economic Forum, Henry Kissinger said the Ukraine should cede territory to Russia to help end the invasion. Kissinger made this claim not because he's a Russian asset, but because he understands that Europe's economy is beginning to implode. So let me bring in Chris Hedges on this. Now, Chris Hedges knows a thing or two about things. And what do you make of Kissinger coming out and saying this? Why would he be unleashed to tell the truth?
Because he comes out of a long history of détente and Cold War relations. George Kennan, the great Sovietologist, they all understood that we shouldn't expand NATO beyond the borders of a unified Germany. At the time, Kennan lived long enough to decry the expansion of NATO as the greatest mistake of the Cold War era.
I just want to chime in here for just a second and elaborate about the expansion of NATO. So for those who are not know, I know some of you are newer to my channel, but I actually started school in Germany. So I was actually there when the Berlin Wall fell. So I remember this very well. And after the Berlin Wall fell, the agreement was that NATO was not supposed to expand. Obviously, it expanded anyway, and that's why we're in this situation now. So I just wanted to chime in there and mention that part, because that's really what is the cause of a lot of this. Had they had stuck to the agreement, the original agreement after the Berlin Wall fell, we would not be in this situation. So let's go back in.
The balance of power politics, which, by the way, is what was disrupted in the Middle East. Iran and Iraq used to balance each other out. And then, of course, we went in there and essentially gave the Iraqi governments to the Shia and made it a province of Iran. And so Kissinger's going back to that old playbook of making sure that there never is an alliance formed between China and Russia. And during the old Soviet Union, especially when Mao visited, he felt that Stalin didn't treat him with appropriate respect and deference. So that's always been part of the kind of geopolitical game, and that's where he's coming. I hate to agree with anything Kissinger says. He of course, alone should spend the rest of his life in prison for what he did in 1973 against Salvador Allende and the Chilean people. But he's right. He's right. That's how it's going to end. But this is, and I think even the very cynical policymakers in Washington know that's how it's going to end. But they pump all these weapons into the Ukraine to essentially degrade to Russia's military, to create a kind of another Chechnya or the old Afghanistan, where the Soviet occupation forces fought the jihadists who became the Taliban, who we funded under Carter. And so he's going back to that old playbook, and he does happen to be right. But that these current neoconservatives, liberal interventionists, all kind of fused into one, see this as a wonderful opportunity to certainly cripple Russia, both in terms of sanctions and in terms of its military capabilities.
Any country that is getting close to the United States, especially economically, the United States sees them as a threat. So Russia, so China, they are considered a threat. They'll find any other reason to blame. I mean, the United States government isn't going to come out and say, hey, Russia's economy is starting to boom. China's economy is starting to boom. They're getting closer to us, so we got to go crush them. They're not going to say that. They have to come up with other reasons. And this is a reality. The United States government wants to be the wealthiest country in the world. It doesn't want any country to pass it economically. It doesn't want any country to over-police more than the United States does. The United States government wants to police the entire world. And that's what they've been doing for a long time. And now that you have countries like China and Russia, where they're like, look, we have our own companies, our own corporations. We can actually get by without you. We don't really need you. We need China more than China needs us. That's where we're at right now. So that is scary to the United States government. Let's go back in.
The sanctions are clearly imposed, by the way, to get rid of Putin. But Kissinger's right. If it backfires, the consequences, and I think it will backfire, the consequences are really dangerous for the stability of Europe. I mean, cutting off Russian, you can't talk about war if you don't talk about markets, which I also write about in this column. They want to stop Russian oil shipments to Europe because then Europe's got to buy from the U.S. at much higher prices. All of Silicon Valley, U.S. manufacturers, although of course most everything is produced in China, there are heavy restraints in terms of their access to the Chinese market. So there's a great hostility towards the Chinese Communist Party, and they certainly are stupid enough to think the threat of war might be a mechanism to open up those markets. It's very clear that in their vision, the idea is to take down Russia, and then they're going to take down China.
Yes.
And it's of course insanity and dangerous. I mean, incredibly dangerous. But and we just got a whole public relations display by Biden, where he's invited Japan and South Korea to the NATO meeting in Madrid. He's trying to create a kind of NATO pact in the Indo-Pacific. It's nuts, but it feeds the coffers of the war industry, or once again making more money than they know what to do with, and of the paid political class and the paid pundits who serve their interests are parroting what it is they want the public to hear. But it's
exactly. Eric, Eric, remember that Julian clip that you sent me last time? Can you put that in the private chat? Because the one about war, because I want to play that again for people. And guys, if you just entered, please be sure to hit the like button. That really helps me with the algorithm, you guys. All right, here we go.
Exceedingly dangerous. Look, I mean, these people, Biden, the Clintons, all of them, they have no business running the country. I mean, they've destroyed the country. Ralph Nader calls them traitors. He's not wrong. They're traitors.
Yep.
But they perpetuate themselves, and they do it, and they know the growing unpopularity. They do it by essentially shutting out third parties. As you know, I work with Ralph.
Let's talk about that for a second. I'm glad he brought this up. Let's talk about them shutting out third parties. Thanks so much for that, Eric. Let's talk about that for a second. Yes, Cynthia McKinney was on here recently. She's been on here before. She's run Green Party. Ralph Nader, we also know about. There's been Jill Stein was on here also recently. So a lot of people that we know of have run third party, and you do have people like Hillary Clinton who smeared Jill Stein and started those smears about her, saying she was a Russian asset. This is what they do. They don't want anybody else to come in and gain any type of political power, any type of stability for the American people that's actually going to fight for the people and do something for them. They don't want those people in. They want people that are part of the two-party system. And this is especially why people who run third party or run as independents, they don't receive much media coverage. One second. Sorry, guys, I'm a little stuffy tonight. They don't receive as much mainstream media coverage. Hell, they don't even get much coverage on independent media, to be honest with you. And when they do get talked about, a lot of times it's through smears. So let's go back in.
And making sure that you have to be so highly funded that essentially they select the candidates. Biden was selected. Remember, I mean, Biden was a disaster, and so they went to their savior, who was Michael Bloomberg, and then that didn't work out really.
Did you notice how he just said Biden was selected? This is something I was talking about before. Like, they pick who they want. Just like the Democratic Party chose Shontel Brown over Nina Turner. The Progressive Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus had already given the signal that this is the candidate that we're going to go with, and we're not going to go with that one. Same thing that you see right now with Henry Cuellar and you see with Jessica Cisneros. The same thing is happening. They've already signaled the bell to say this is the guy that we want and this is the person that we don't want. And 9 times out of 10, The person that has the most money and the person that is pre-selected is the one who wins. That's how this works, ladies and gentlemen. Now, some people will point back and they say, what about members of the squad that were able to get in? You notice they're having a tougher time getting in now. The Democratic Party adjusted their plans, adjusted what they were used to doing. And they said, we have to come up with another strategy so that these other progressives like the AOCs and the Rashida Tlaib, so that doesn't happen again. That's why now you'll notice people who are running this time around are going to have a more difficult time than that first group that came in. Because honestly, did they expect them to win? No, they didn't. I sat here, and for those who are new and don't know, Ayanna Pressley, I was in her district. She was my city councilor. That's how I was able to vote for her. I watched the debate between her and the incumbent. And I got to tell you, he didn't even try. He didn't fight. He didn't try. It was like he just automatically just assumed that because he had been in office for so long that he had it in the bag. Same thing with AOC's opponent, with Crowley. He thought the same thing. I don't really have to come out there and try. Then when he saw that she was starting to lead in the polls, and he was like, oh, crap, I got to show up to this community that I'm supposed to be a part of, but I don't really live here and I don't really deal with the people. I actually got to try to win this time. Same thing with Elliot Engel and Jamal Bowman. And the Congressional Black Caucus endorsed Elliot Engel. The Congressional Black Caucus endorsed Elliot Engel, the white candidate, over Jamal Bowman, who's the black candidate. And this is why I say to people again, everything I just told you, why on earth would you want to go into this party? Why? They're so corrupt. Look at what they do.
Well, and then Obama had to intervene and tell everybody they had to drop out. It's just, meanwhile, we're paying very serious consequences for this.
Well, it's not. And by the way, so you like to make it out that it's, Biden and the usual war hawks but it's, guess who else it is? So here's Matt Duss. And what does he say? He says, good for Kissinger to pop his head up to remind people why Putin thought he could get away with it. Oh, my God. And do you know who so that's Matt Duss trying to discredit Kissinger calling for peace and for diplomacy and negotiations.
And I want to, I want to jump in this part right here where he says that, Kissinger is calling for peace and negotiations. This is something that was interesting to me too, because some of the same people that said, no, we want peace. I'm like, okay, well, you got a Ukraine flag in your Twitter bio there. Yeah, but I'm not against one or the other. I just want peace. I'm like, okay. Now that you have someone like Henry Kissinger calling for peace, now some of those same people are saying, well, no, Ukraine has to continue to fight. They can't give up. They must win. I'm like, dude, they're not going to win. I want to make everyone understand they're not going to win. So essentially, the United States government has given Ukraine billions and billions of dollars to lose, when that money could have went right here to the American people. All that money, what a waste. Let's go back in.
Laying out this is how this is going to end. And we all know this is how it's going to end. And there's Matt Duss cheering on the war machine. Why is that important? Who's Matt Duss, Jimmy? Matt Duss was the foreign policy advisor to Bernie Sanders.
Uh-oh.
And now we know why Bernie Sanders sucks so much. Because he filled his campaign with people like that. I'm pretty sure Matt Duss came right out of the Center for American Progress.
Which, by the way, does no real progress. It's one of those organizations that has like a cool name that makes it sound like they're doing something really great, but they're just as corporate and corrupt as the rest.
Pretty sure, as did his campaign manager, Bernie Sanders. And now you know why Bernie Sanders goes going along with this. Bernie Sanders isn't saying a peep. He's not doing anything. He's not standing up against this. $40 billion could end homelessness 2 times over in America. Bernie Sanders voted for it.
And so Bernie also doesn't get to brag about voting against the war in Iraq now, because you voted to send all this money to Ukraine to fight, by the way. Bernie Sanders is not as revolutionary as he used to be. Now, I'm talking about old school Bernie Sanders. I'm talking go back to the 70s, go back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, that Bernie Sanders. He is not as revolutionary as he used to be.
And now you know why we live in a failed state. Because the people who are supposed to be the champions of regular people, he's supposed to be an independent. Bernie Sanders, which is the biggest bullshit I ever heard in my life, is going along with it. There is no...
Oh, hold on. Let me do something really quick. Let me go out and come back in. Okay, and go back just a little bit. Okay, sorry.
In America, Bernie Sanders voted for it. And now you know why we live in a failed state. Because the people who are supposed to be the champions of regular people, he's supposed to be an independent. Bernie Sanders, which is the biggest bullshit I ever heard in my life, is going along with it. There is no left in America. I keep telling people that. And people...
There isn't. Let me chime in here for a second. There may be individual people who are leftists, but do we have a true left in this country? No, we don't. Especially when you compare us to other countries. We just don't. America is a conservative country. I keep telling people this. I keep telling people who have always lived in like these blue, enclaves, people who have always lived in like these progressive, like grassroots areas, like the rest of the country is very much conservative. We're not as big as we think, like on the left. And most people, even on the left, are not as far left as I am. So this is kind of like embarrassing in a way. And since when you think about someone like Bernie Sanders, who, again, like I said, he brags about voting against the war in Iraq. Well, it was him and Barbara Lee. He brags about that. But dude, like what you did 20 something years ago, it's like, it doesn't matter now because look at what you're doing now. It's like the civil rights leaders or the civil rights activists that like to brag about, I was there with Dr. King. I sat right next to Jesse. I marched in the streets with Malcolm. But now they're like neoliberals who tell you to vote for Joe Biden, who tell you to vote for Crime Bill Joe. So everything that you did back then, and a good example of this is Reverend Al Sharpton. He likes to say this a lot. I marched with Dr. King. That's great. Dude, what are you doing today, though? What are you doing right now? You march with Dr. King for civil rights for African Americans in this country, and you want people to vote for Crime Bill Joe. Somebody tell me how that makes any sense. It doesn't make any sense. How could you sell out? How could you go down that path? What if Dr. King was alive today? What do you think he would say about some of the people who marched with him, about Jesse Jackson, about Al Sharpton, how they just sold out and got their bag? So I don't want to hear about what you did 20, 30 years ago if you're selling out today.
People say stuff like, well, the squad is the best chance we have, Jimmy. You shouldn't criticize them so hard. We don't have the squad. We don't have Bernie Sanders. The Democratic Party, which means the corporate donors, the corporate class, the oligarchs, they have the squad. They have Bernie Sanders. We don't have anything. This idea that they're on our side is a fucking joke of all jokes. And there it is right there. There's Bernie Sanders, foreign policy guy. When Kissinger is to the left of you, I think maybe I would take a look at my position again. That's, by the way, Kissinger, you call yourself a war criminal? It sounds like a pussy. That's what Matt Duss is saying. That's what he's saying. And here's Max Blumenthal. Good for Dust to pop his head up to remind people why Bernie has become more hawkish on Ukraine than Henry Kissinger.
This is so embarrassing. Like, if I was Bernie Sanders, I would be embarrassed. Like, you should be embarrassed. And the point that Jimmy brought up about Bernie being an independent, I want to talk about that for just a second too. Because what's the point of being an independent if you know that every time you are always going to caucus with the Democratic Party? You're going to do what Democrat Party leadership tells you to do. At this point, are you still an independent? Because it seems like to me, you're more so a Democrat. Why isn't Bernie Sanders using his independent title to actually hold some type of leverage towards the Democratic Party? Let me give you an example. I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm an independent. Joe Manchin, you want me to sign your bill? Okay. You're going to have to bring Medicare for all to the floor for a vote, and you're going to have to sign it. I won't sign any of your bills until you agree to give everyone in this country universal health care. Why doesn't he do something like that? I'm not doing any. You know who does do that? Joe Manchin. He does it all the time. I'm not doing this until you do this. Well, Bernie Sanders, you're the independent. Why aren't you doing that?
Okay. And Michael Tracy says, what's the alternative to Kissinger's suggestion, if not perpetual war? Because I still remember when everyone claimed they were sick of that. There's the only alternative to what Kissinger is saying is forever war. Here's Matt Duss. Folks, if your anti-imperialism leads you to not along with Henry Kissinger, it might be a good step back. Good to step back and take a moment. And I say, if you're to the right of Henry Kissinger, it might be a good time to step back and take a moment, Matt. And here's what Glenn Greenwald says. Your boss, Bernie Sanders, just voted with Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell, Tom Cotton, and Liz Cheney to support this $40 billion war package. So I don't really think these sorts of guilt by association tactics are helpful to you right now. Please compare the tweet above from Bernie Sanders' foreign policy advisor, Matt Dutt, the one I just showed you, bitterly scolding unnamed anti-war leftists for citing Kissinger on Ukraine, with the exact same person below twice approving citing Kissinger on Iran. So what he's pointing out is Matt Duss just tried to discredit Henry Kissinger, and here's his tweets praising Henry Kissinger when he agreed with some good quotes from Kissinger, Schultz.
So he's busted here, basically.
On Iran deal, but notable that in a long article they offered no alternative ideas. Some criticisms aside, good Kissinger and Schultz op-ed on Iran deal. So that's who these people are. And let me just bring in Aaron Mate. He says, when Bernie Sanders got Russiagated in February 2020, Max Blumenthal asked Matt Duss why the campaign had not pushed back and demanded evidence for the alleged Russian interference in its favor. Duss said the campaign accepted U.S. intel claims, having been briefed convincingly.
And that's because they never intended for Bernie Sanders to actually win. I'm sorry, I had to say the quiet part out loud, but they never intended for him to win. That was never going to happen. I believed in it too. I thought it could happen too, but now that I know what I know, that was never going to happen. I think I need to fast forward here, actually. I think we get back to Chris Hedges right about here. Yep.
You thought you were getting, and then there's the real politic, and that's it. Chris Hedges, what do you make of someone like Matt Duss, Bernie Sanders, the entire left going, being as hawkish as anybody, as Ronald Reagan, as can't even think of anybody?
Well, it's a faux left. I mean, it's not a real left. It's a left that won't confront American militarism because their political career would end. Even Bernie wouldn't confront militarism. The fact is, if we don't radically reduce military spending, and retreat from our 800 military bases around the world, if we continue to essentially throw ourselves into unsustainable debt to carry out acts of futile and military adventurism, one debacle after another, starting with Vietnam, going all the way through. And these people they're never held accountable, both in the kind of pundit class, the Tom Friedmans and George Packers and the others. They're all.
And it's both parties, by the way. It's Republicans and it's Democrats. They're both pro-war.
The same, the Kagans, they're all the same cheerleaders for all of these disastrous military interventions. They never go away. They're never held accountable. The people who oversee it, both politically and militarily, are never held accountable. And you can't confront them. If you do confront them, it's political oblivion. And Sanders is smart enough to know that, so he didn't do it. He won't do it.
Hold on to that thought right there. He said that you can't confront them because they know if they do that, then it's political oblivion. I think he said oblivion, right? Anyway, things go bad for you politically. He's right. That's why Bernie Sanders only pushes, but so far. Don't be surprised if Bernie Sanders has gotten approval to do some of the things that he's done in reference to pushing back on certain politicians. Don't be surprised. Just like the squad got, permission from Nancy Pelosi to protest at the steps of the Capitol, they got permission for that. Don't be surprised if the same thing has happened with Bernie Sanders. Well, yes, Bernie Sanders, you can run for president in 2016, but as long as you don't start a third party. Yes, Bernie Sanders, you can run for president again in 2020, as long as you don't extend your movement and continue it after you lose. Yes, Bernie Sanders, you can run for president in 2020. Yes, you can criticize Joe Biden, but don't go too hard on him. Don't be surprised.
What if he did, though? What do you think? What if he did? What if he tried to rally the progressives in the House and get people out in the street, all of his followers, right? All of his millions and millions of followers. What if he tried to rally people against this? Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, well, that would show political courage, which he doesn't have. He would end up like Nader. That's not conjecture because I was at an.
Okay, let's talk about that point. Like he said, political courage. And he said that's something that Bernie Sanders doesn't really have. And he mentions Ralph Nader. And I want to remind you guys, it was a couple of years ago? Maybe it was like 2 years ago. I have to look it up. But I remember Bernie Sanders saying he didn't want to go the way of Ralph Nader. Let's hear that one more time. That was pretty cool. Here we go.
Accountable. And you can't confront them. If you do confront them, it's political oblivion. And Sanders is smart enough to know that, so he didn't do it. He won't do it.
What if he did, though? What do you think? What if he did? What if he tried to rally the progressives in the House and get people out in the street, all of his followers, right? All of his millions and millions of followers. What if he tried to rally people against this? Wouldn't that be something?
Which is what he said he was going to do when he was running. He said that even if he lost, he'd be outside with his movement.
Yeah, well, that would show political courage, which he doesn't have. He would end up like Nader. That's not conjecture because I was at an event with Bernie before at the climate march with Shama Sawant, the socialist city councilwoman, and she kept pressing him to run as an independent. This is before in the first presidential run, 2016. And finally, Bernie said, I don't want to end up like Nader. Well, that was the answer. He didn't want to end up like Nader. His political career was more important to him than doing what you just said.
Dude, he's like, 80 years old? Like, how long do you want to still be a politician? Look, let me tell you something. I still want to interview Ralph Nader. I haven't been able to find contact for him. I'll still keep trying for that. But I'm willing to bet. I bet you Ralph Nader is probably living his best life, okay? Ralph Nader is probably like, man, I can go sit on my porch in my backyard, go sit on my deck, have a margarita, a daiquiri, whatever. I don't even know if Ralph Nader drinks or whatever. I'm just saying. Ralph Nader is probably living his best life. He's probably like, man, it feels so good not to have to fight people, in DC anymore, not to have to get permission, not to get scolded, not to be a part of such a corrupt system anymore. I don't have anybody telling me what I need to sign, what I need to vote on, what I need to say, who I can talk to, which press outlets I'm allowed to interview with. Ralph Nader is probably living his best life. Oh, Sulamoon said he still does his podcast. So there you go. He's probably just like, screw the game. I'm having fun.
And they're ruthless. I mean, I mentioned Henry Wallace. I mentioned McGovern. And the elites conspired against both of those figures. Remember that when McGovern got the nomination, the Democratic hierarchy immediately bonded with the Republican hierarchy to destroy McGovern. And then they changed all the rules. So there would never be a grassroots movement that would be able to nominate a Democratic candidate again.
And they like to change the rules. Just like they said during the Democratic primaries in 2020, what if we changed the rules and made it so that the person that had the most delegates was not the nominee? Remember that? They changed the rules so that Michael Bloomberg could enter the race. He showed up last minute. Like, what? I didn't agree with that. Don't like Bloomberg, but even if I did like him, I still wouldn't agree with that. No, you can't show up like Johnny come lately because you have a bunch of money and now you're just going to try to take over and win this thing. You weren't there from the beginning, but they let him in. That's what they'll do. Change the rules so that the people that they want in actually get in. Again, why do people want to go into this party?
So he knows his history. He knows what would happen. He doesn't want to pay the price.
It is amazing. So demonizing Ralph Nader the way they did, they even got lefties to do it. I never fell for that shit. So I'm very proud of myself. I never turned on Ralph Nader and pretended like he was the reason that we got George Bush as our president. By the way, those same people who hated Ralph Nader for giving us George Bush now love George Bush.
Right, there you go.
So they still hate Ralph Nader. Isn't that?
It was so frustrating. This is factually untrue because they stopped the counting after 2 counties and they swung it to the Supreme Court and they overturned any legal precedent that I know of and appointed Bush president by judicial fiat. It had nothing.
You heard that, guys, about stopping the count? I remember that. I remember. Sebastian, I'm sorry, but it's the Gen Z in me. Who is Ralph Nader? What am I going to do, Sebastian? Let me show you. Wait a minute. Okay, let me finish this. I'll show you a picture of Ralph Nader, and then I want to play that Julian Assange video about war.
To do with Nader, Gore ran such a shitty campaign he couldn't even carry his home state of Tennessee. So, but they were frightened of Nader.
That's right.
Just like they were frightened of Ron Paul. Ron Paul pulled 19%. That terrified him. That was the last time a third-party candidate was ever going to get in the debates.
Yes. Ron Paul and also Ross Perot got 20%, I believe. Ross Perot got 20%. Ron Paul got like 17%. And although this person did not run, Jesse Ventura was actually polling at 18%, but he decided not to run for president via Green Party. So yeah, that's actually scary for the duopoly. If you're getting that much, because you have to get at least 5% to get federal funding. So that was the thing too with Jill Stein. Once Jill Stein got to 5%, and I think at one point she had 7%. Once she got to 5%, that was when they started to smear her more because they said, now she gets the funding. Now she's actually can pull votes away from us. And that's the idea a lot of times, right? The idea a lot of times when someone runs third party or independent is not so much because they think they're going to win. Now, some do, but sometimes it's a strategy. It's a technique to pull votes away from one of the other parties. That's what happened with Ross Perot. He pulled votes away from George Bush Sr., which George Bush Sr., that should have been an easy second term, but I think he underestimated Bill Clinton and Ross Perot, actually. I think he underestimated both of them. So there's that. All right, let me go back in.
And even in the Democratic primaries, if you remember, most of those, when Kucinich was running, I like Dennis, he's a friend of mine, when he was challenging the healthcare industry, well, the healthcare into the debates are sponsored by corporations.
That's right.
Most of them by the healthcare, the pharmaceutical and insurance industry. And so they had this rule that you had to be number 4, I think, in the top 4 could only enter the debate. And I think when Dennis got to New Hampshire, or one of these states, I can't remember, New Hampshire was first, so it probably wasn't New Hampshire. But anyway, one of the states, he was 4, and they locked him physically out of the hall. They wouldn't even let him in. The whole game is fixed. And if you play by the rules that they imposed, and the squad does, Bernie does, then they'll let you spout off. And the right wing does it too. I mean, it's a good point you made. Marjorie Taylor Greene's no different. It's all political theater. Nobody.
Told you. You've heard this multiple times this week. Cynthia McKinney came on and said the same thing. The whole game is fixed. Even if that means they have to change the rules, they will change the rules. I am looking at the time, so I do need to come out of this per se, and I do need to go ahead and play. Let me play this video from Julian where he talks about what the goal of war actually is. Now, is that up here? Shoot balls. Where'd you put it, Eric? I'll leave this alone. I'll let you do it. Okay. Okay. Listen to this. This is the actual goal.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
The goal is to have an endless war, not a successful one. So this whole conflict with Ukraine and Russia can go on for who knows how long. And the United States government will just continue to give them money. I want to shout out some of the chats, and then I'm going to go to my final story. All right, Gamer says, happy Friday to you, Sabby. Happy Friday to you too, Gamer. Thank you for the super chat, Donnie Nunn. You should really check out the Zeitgeist films and interview Peter Joseph. Ask Lee Camp and Ron Placone. They know Peter well. Oh, I didn't know they knew him. I could reach out to them. Angela says, wasn't it Caitlin Johnstone that said the blue and yellow flag in the bio was the international symbol for you're about to read a really stupid tweet? That sounds like something she would say. Thank you for the super chat, Oz. Proof the Biden regime, Itale, are war criminals. Love Sabby. Thank you so much. Nightwolf says, completely agree. If Bernie Sanders would have won, he would be the same as Joe Biden. Those are indisputable facts. Exactly. Thank you for the super chat, Troy. Wow, this is a nice, very generous of you, Troy. Tax dollars at the federal level are deleted. The U.S. federal government, as the sole creator and issuer of U.S. dollars, is not limited by its own currency, therefore does not need your taxes. Congress passes a spending bill, and voila, dollars are born. Hashtag learn MMT. Thank you so much for that. All right, let me go ahead and get into our second story. So obviously you guys know about the school shooting in Texas that has happened. More information has come out about this. Obviously, a lot of us are really upset with the police department in Uvalde. And this story came out about why the cops did not do what they should have done, which is go in and try to save as many children as possible. There were some police officers that went in to save their own kids and left the other kids in. There were other police officers that would not go into the building. So I want you to listen to this interview here, which is the Texas police lieutenant says cops were reluctant to engage gunmen. So let's go ahead and go into this here. I'm going to play this video. Just give it just a second to Load. But I have a lot to say about this. This is probably one of the most horrible explanations I've heard.
Or was it a mistake?
Okay, I was making sure it wasn't going to play an ad. Here we go. Oh.
Do you believe, Lieutenant, for the officers on the scene who were there, as you correctly point out, to wait for this second tactical team to arrive before fully pushing into that school and neutralizing the gunman?
So what we do know, Wolf, is that there was multiple officers that arrived on scene. There was 3 officers that arrived that made entry at one of the entrances where the gunman actually made entrance to. We had another 4 officers that made entry at the other entrance of the school. So there was officers inside that school. As they were taking gunfire, they were also calling in for reinforcement, backup, tactical teams, snipers, any additional personnel that could arrive to assist to not only with the situation, but also to assist in evacuating students and teachers. At that time, that's when a U.S. Border Patrol tactical officer arrived, also with a Zavala County Sheriff's deputy, as well as 2 additional Uvalde Police Department officers were able to go into that classroom with a ballistic shield as cover. And of course, we know that one of those officers, an agent, actually was shot, was grazed at the top of the head, but they were able to shoot and kill the suspect and preserve any other life. We know that there was other injured children inside that classroom that they were able to save as well and get them to cover. And at that point, it became a recovery process, a rescue operation, trying to rescue the injured and also any other potential children or teachers that were inside those classrooms.
But don't current best practices, Lieutenant, call for officers to disable a shooter as quickly as possible, regardless of how many officers are actually on site?
Correct. The active shooter situation, you want to stop the killing, you want to preserve life, but also one thing that, of course, the American people need to understand is that officers are making entry into this building. They do not know where the gunman is. They are hearing gunshots. They are receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded any further, not knowing where this suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. And at that point, that gunman would have the opportunity to kill other people inside that school. So they were able to contain that gunman inside that classroom so that he was not able to go to any other portions of the school to commit any other killings.
Or was it a mistake, do you believe, Lieutenant, for the officers on the scene who were there, as you correctly point out, to wait for this second tactical?
I want you to hear this last part one more time because this sounds like a piece of crap to me. Let's listen to this last part one more time.
One thing that, of course, the American people need to understand is that officers are making entry into this building. They do not know where the gunman is. They are hearing gunshots. They are receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded any further, not knowing where this suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. And at that point, that gunman would have the opportunity to kill other people inside that school. So they were able to contain that gunman inside that classroom so that he was not able to go to any other portions of the school to commit any other killings.
Or was it a mistake, do you believe, Lieutenant, for the officers on?
Let's talk about something for a second. When people sign up to be a police officer, they know the danger they are putting themselves in. They know that there is a chance that any day on the job, out in the field, that they could be killed, that they could lose their life. That is the job that they chose. People aren't forced to be cops. So essentially, you have the lieutenant telling you here, well, they could have been shot if they went in. And that's a part of their job. That's the risk that you take when you decide to become a police officer. So basically, they were trying to save themselves first. This whole talking point that this lieutenant gave that they needed to wait until the second unit got there, until the SWAT team came in, sounds like a bunch of bull to me. Someone pointed this out in the chat. I lost it. Shoot. Someone pointed this out in the chat about Columbine. Where was that? Now, I do remember Columbine. And you have to think about the fact that there were more police officers than there was a shooter. There was one shooter. There were multiple police officers. What do you have? What do they have their guns for? What? They signed up for this job and they weren't actually, I don't know, expecting to actually have to fight? I lost that comment. Shoot. But anyway, someone mentioned about Columbine that in that particular case, they didn't have to wait for the second units to show up. They went in. So let me get this straight, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen videos of the parents standing outside the school. They wouldn't let the parents go in. The parents wanted to go in and save their kids. They said, no, you can't. But at the same time, the police officers didn't want to go in. If you are a police officer and you're afraid that you may get shot on the job to the point where it will stop you from intervening when you are supposed to, then do the rest of us a favor, grab your badge and take it off. Because this is what you sign up for when you decided to become a cop. They couldn't go against one person. So other kids died because they were afraid that they would be hurt. Do you understand the logic of that? Does anyone understand the logic? Imagine if you had firefighters who were afraid that they would be burned, who were afraid to risk their life, that their lives might be affected on the job. Imagine if firefighters didn't run inside of the burning house. And then people wonder why I continue to say we need to defund the police. We have continued to give them more and more money. They can't even do their damn job. What did he think this position was going to be? Mondays at Dunkin' Donuts? What did they think they were going to do? Just ride around the car and cruise and just eat donuts and coffee and not really have to fight or do anything? Aren't they trained to apprehend a shooter? I go back to this again. Police don't prevent crime. We just had 2 mass shootings pretty much back to back, a couple days in between each other. Police solve 0.02% of crimes. So knowing both of those things and knowing that police protect capital, police don't really protect people, why in the hell are we continuing to give the police more money? Let's come out of this video, Eric. There's something else I want to show you about this. I'll go to Caitlin's in just a second. If you think that's tough, now this is coming from the White House. White House sidesteps question about police response to Texas school shooting. The White House refused to call for an investigation into the police response to the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, saying that President Joe Biden has the utmost respect for the men and women of law enforcement. This is how screwed up our country is right now. All of these kids lost their lives, and our own president will not even call for an investigation of this police department. When I tell you they don't care about your kids, believe me, they don't. They let the child tax credit in. They don't care about your kids. They don't want to investigate the police department with this particular incident. They don't care about your kids. This is one of the problems with the United States. This is a country of individualism. This is not a country of community. We don't really have community in this country. We have individualism. That's a big part of the problem. And when you have that type of thinking and that type of mindset, it teaches you to worry about yourself, to care for yourself, to focus on yourself, to care about your own. It does not teach you to protect and care about your community. I've lived in other countries, and I have never seen or heard about as many mass shootings as we have in this country in those other countries. Some of them don't have any. Even if they've had some, none of them have as nearly as many as we do. That's how violent this country is. You know why? Because the people here are not cared for. We don't even want to give everybody health care in this country. People talking about mental health. How are you going to do mental health and everybody doesn't have health care? Who's going to pay for that if you can't afford to do it? We don't want to give everyone a decent education. We don't want to give everyone a place to live. We don't want to give everyone a living wage. These are the problems with capitalism in this country. And we have now entered late stage capitalism. And if you think that this is brutal, it's only going to get worse if we do not stop what we are doing. We do not stop being selfish, and we don't start caring for people in our community and caring for each other. That's where mutual aid can come in. This is where direct action can come in. Fighting against these types of decisions against the United States government, where they're telling you they don't even want to investigate a police department. This is where electoral politics, people like the squad, this is where voting is not really going to help you, because people voted for Joe Biden. People voted for members of the squad, but they are the ones that we have to push back against. So if the politicians are not going to help you, we have to help each other. Let's go to Caitlin Johnstone. I want to show you something that she said. Watching an entire country learn that it's not actually a cop's job to save anyone or risk any danger. And the only reason they assumed otherwise was because of movies and TV shows. A lot of people in this country right now are very shocked. They are just now seeing what some of us have seen, especially in Black communities, what some of us have seen for a long time, that the cops don't protect you. They protect capital. I think I got all of them. Yeah, I got all of them. That's the problem. Some Americans are just now seeing that. They're just waking up to it. I just read the tweet. Yeah, I just read that. Do I need to read it again? I'm confused. Oh, okay. So this is what we're going to talk about tonight on Call In. We're going to bring it back up again. Defunding the police. Based on what you have just seen with the school shooting in Texas and the way the police responded, how do you feel about defunding the police now? We're going to talk about that tonight. I think I got everything, Eric. I'm going to do my break really quick. I'll come back and say peace, and then we'll go right over to Call In. I do want to shout this out. Greg Bruce said, bruh, they had the shooter outnumbered how many to 1? Exactly. There's no excuse. Told you. They don't care about the people. It's a hot mess. It's a hot mess. All right, Eric, you ready to come on? I think there's comments on Rockfin. I don't know. Okay. Eric's going to read some of the comments and then I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be back to say peace out. And then join me on call-in. And then let me
sound
do
okay, Sabby?
Yeah, you sound fine.
All right.
Let's put the call-in link in the chat too. Oh, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to open the room in about 10 minutes, guys. And we're going to talk about this whole situation, what I just told you about the police and about them not really protecting the people.
All right. How's everybody doing? We're giving Sabrina her little break. And let's see what's going on. One thing I want to note is the call-in. Once we go to call-in, it's going to be on call-in only, because the YouTube stream will be ending at that point. So you will have to switch over to call-in. We'll make, and I think it's the pinned link, and we'll make sure we're posting that link and everything. All right, I saw a super chat just came in from Mr. Roger Meadows here on YouTube. Don't do it to me again, Sab. I'm not sure what that's about unless we missed something on him, or maybe he's mad that I'm reading his tweets. I don't know, but let's see what Roger put out here for us on the old Rockfin. Let me kick this thing around. All right. From Mr. Roger Meadows on Rockfin, thanks for the comment, the paid comment. You said, I know what you mean about, I don't know if that's Al or AI. Oh, Al Sharpton, I think he means, yeah. But Al never said he marched with King. He was 8 years old when MLK was killed. I actually seen him say specifically he didn't march with MLK. Messy Jesse, on the other hand, who Al ran Operation Breadbasket for, where he was under his tutelage. Different story. Let's see here. We got one more on the old Rockfin. Sabby, you're giving the this is another also from Roger Meadows. Says, Sabby, you're giving the A- argument about them being cowards and not going in there to save the kids because they were too afraid of getting shot. Nope, go with the A+ argument that they couldn't have been that afraid if they went in to save their own kids. Now we're cooking. Let's move forward with that argument from this day forth. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Roger, but it is kind of a different thing to go in to save your own kid versus other people's kids. So there's also, that part of it as well. But yeah, it's let's kick that around. But it's pretty clear, not exactly profiles encouraged there. By the way, today I'm probably noticed a different background. It's a little noisy here. I'm at a friend's place near Boston, and a bit of a busy street, but we are good. Let's see, what else was I gonna say? Yeah, there's one thing with all this is Caitlin Johnstone had a recent article that about how she connected, the generalized violence to just to everything going on. Let me see if I can bring that up here, just while we're kicking around here. Sorry, this is actually hard to do multiple things at once and keep talking. Here it comes. Yeah, so this was one of Caitlin's recent ones that she titled, Has America Tried Bombing Its Mass Shooting Problem? And let me read a little bit of this, because of course Caitlin's always based And she says, oh, cool, it's the part of the news cycle where Democrats and Republicans pretend something's going to change about American gun laws for a few days. It's a gun control problem. No, it's a mental health problem. And then nothing changes about gun laws or mental health. And we just repeat. And yeah, she, I really liked how she was connecting the whole thing to empire, to our violent empire. As she's saying here, it's surely not a coincidence that the nation that serves as the hub of a globe-spanning empire that's held together by mass murder and war propaganda and mass psychological manipulation is the only nation with a mass shooting epidemic. But this will never be studied. It will never be studied because empire is invisible to mainstream science and social psychology. In the same way it's invisible to mainstream media, mainstream politics, mainstream academia. The empire is not even acknowledged to exist within the spheres of mainstream thought. And this is a deliberately engineered reality. The spheres of mainstream thought which prevent people from understanding that we are dominated by an unacknowledged empire which stretches across nations and influences our lives more than virtually anything else our attention is diverted to, are actively influenced by that very empire. We are all marinating in the U.S. centralized empire. Its influence, its propaganda, its artificially manufactured culture, its ways of thinking. We're so immersed in it, we can't see it. It's like water for fish to us. So we won't see any research into its influence on the collective psyche. So yeah, it's there's kind of this whole concept of, it's not an individual problem. It's not a Democrat Republican problem. It's an empire problem. It's a capitalism problem. And as long as you have this rapacious greed and capitalism and empire and militarism, I mean, we really shouldn't be surprised when these kind of incidents happen. Back to there. Yeah, so we'll be going to the call-in shortly, and Sabby will be back on. There's she had a call-in on Thursday as well, and I saw a case study QB on that, and he had a really good comment that I wanted to highlight, where he was talking about, instead of like there was discussion of direct action mutual aid versus electoral politics, and these things are always being discussed as should we do one, should we do the other, should we do a certain amount of percentage on one versus the other. And I was I wanted in case suggested doing both together, and that really resonated with me. That's really something that I was also that I've also been trying to say, that we shouldn't be viewing these things as opposition. Is what I'd propose, in that we should be doing both, and we should be doing both centered around a set of demands, and make the demands be kind of the glue between those two. And with that, you can kind of run it all together and make it work. And I know Trish T voting isn't getting us anywhere. I think he meant to say we need to figure out how to get better candidates to vote for, right? Right. All right, now we got to figure out, let's see, I think we just need to make sure we get this link up before we cut off.
Yeah, and I want to share some good news before I go. I got a huge surprise this week, and I haven't had a chance to tell you guys about it. But looks like I will be having a lot of fun on Sunday. I'm going to share with you guys. Guys, you got to excuse my hair. It's so humid today. I'm going to share this with you guys. So I got a huge surprise this week. I was surprised with tickets, and I'm going to Boston Calling this weekend. I've been before. The last time I went, I saw Eminem. He was the headliner. I was surprised Eminem came. So these are the lineups this weekend. Well, obviously Friday already happened, but tonight was 9 Inch Nails. Rufus Du Sol, I don't know who that is. Haim, Avril Lavigne, Cheap Trick, Oliver Tree, The Struts, Paris Jackson, and Grandson. And wait, is that all of them? Oh no, there's more. Born Without Bones, Avenue, Miranda Ray, The Chelsea Curve. Some of these people I'd never heard of. And then Saturday, why is 9 Inch Nails doing 2 days in a row? I thought that was supposed to be Foo Fighters. Oh, that's right. The drummer died. I forgot. Yeah, the drummer for Foo Fighters passed away. That's probably why they're not going to be there. So Saturday's show is 9 Inch Nails again. Run the Jewels. That's Killer Mike's band. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I don't know who that is. Black Pumas, Earth Gang, Orville Peck, Kenny Hoopla, Sundin Archives, Celise, I don't know who that is. Hens, Francis Forever, Charlotte Sands, Julie Rhodes, Van Buren Records. But I'm going to Sunday's show, which the headliner is Metallica. I'm so excited. I've never seen Metallica live, so this will be nostalgia for me. For that day, it's going to be Metallica, Weezer, Glass Animals, Modest Mouse, Goose, Ripe, Japanese Breakfast, Cults, Peachtree Rascals, Horse Girl, DJ-O, Cam Meekins, Oompa, Cliff Notes, Crooked Coast, Aaron of the Lord, and Paper Tigers. But Sunday is the show. I'm going to see Metallica. I'm so excited. They'll probably go last. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Weezer, but they were kind of cool like in the 90s and stuff like that. But oh my gosh, I'm so excited, you guys. I get to be like, Enter Sandman. They'll probably do that one last. I think they'll do that one last. My hubs has seen them before. I've never seen them before. So I'm super excited. I'm going to be like, what is it? Oh, sleep with one eye open, gripping your pillow tight, exit light, enter night, take my hand, we're off to Never Never Land. Woo! All right, guys. So that's it. I'm out. I'm pumped. I'm excited. Have a good night. Join me on Call In. The link is here. It's also pasted, or it should be pinned at the top of the chat. So join me over there. We're going to talk about this shooting, and we're going to talk about defunding the police. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.